Welcome back to the league that means nothing on Go Again Gaming.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the League That Means Nothing, the place where there are absolutely no stakes except for glory and bragging rights, of course. My name is Bryce Platts from Arcane Games and Events, and with me, I like to bring a new friend every single round to this glorious League That Means Nothing. And this time, it's somebody that I have never, ever casted with, and it is long overdue. This is, of course, Eleanor May Bird from such amazing shows as Canadian Nationals and many other amazing Tier 4 events. Ellie, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really stoked. I'm very excited to kind of like get this in, especially knowing that you and I are going to be, speaking of being overdue, on a show together soon. Spoilers, but really looking forward to that. Really looking forward to the games that we have going on today, and just super stoked to get to spend some time with you. I'm a big fan of the work you've done on the AGE circuit. I watched basically every single one of the SoCal streams.
Cannot thank you enough for that, and we are incredibly flattered. And the only thing that would be better is if we were finally able to have you as a competitor, you and your lovely partner. Of course, I know it's a little bit far for a 1K
So
every
cursed.
month.
It's like so cursed. It's like I love y'all, but like the pricing compared
The EV
to the like
would be
$600
non-existent.
flight is so bad.
One of these days we'll have to catch you when you just happen to be in LA or New England for that matter. But enough about that, Ellie. Let's go ahead and get to the subject at hand because we have got a juicy matchup, especially for myself and you as a Warrior sympathizer. We've got Fang, Drakai of Blades versus Gravy Bones. So it is going to be searing blades of kerosene versus a bunch of guys that are literally falling apart.
Do you think they have you think they have kerosene in Volcor?
Oh,
think it's
100%.
magic?
I think they have a little bit of both. I think they use magic when it really counts, and they use the kerosene when it's time to fire up the Barbie. You know, you can't be wasting that magic stuff well willy-nilly. Ellie, do you have any predictions for this matchup? Anyone you want to give the particular edge to?
This one's kind of interesting to me because I feel like I hear from like Fang players that they feel really good about their Gravy Bones matchup. But I kind of like, it depends a lot on what the Fang deck looks like for what it's worth. I think if they're playing that like I really miss playing Mara's Dromai deck kind of Fang deck where you just like 4 all the time, I could very much seeing that being really hard for Gravy. If they're like playing Valiant Dynamos, I'm here to just like grind and play mid range, and you're limited to 2 attacks a turn, I feel like a very in control Gravy player might just set up something big and run you over. So I'm kind of curious to see like what the decks look like, but I'll be optimistic and say that Fang can take down the Pirate Necromancer boogeyman of the format.
I will also be huffing the copium optimism over here on my side of the board, mainly because I'm known for being really excited about Fang since his inception in The Hunted. I've never been a Warrior player before that, but in general, at least in the early days, I felt pretty darn good into Gravy Bones just because of the efficient numbers that Fang can dish out and his blocking potential. That being said, it was a little bit before all of these newfangled Gravy lists that had just super go wide turns in addition to solid board presence. So I do think it's entirely possible that Fang just gets run over and outvalued in general, which is kind of a crazy thing to say about a deck that is running Valiant Dynamos and is known for being, value town as far as decks go. So before we get into that, though, Ellie, we do have a very important message from our sponsors. So let's go ahead and cut to that. Roll the clip as.
Hey, everybody, it's TCG Ted, and I'm super thrilled to be sponsoring the League That Means Nothing this season on Going and Gaming. Check me out on YouTube, and I hope you enjoy the games.
Thank you so much to this sponsor and all of the ones that support the League That Means Nothing, and thereby many great games of Flesh and Blood. Ellie, are you ready to dig into this one or what?
Hell yeah.
Okay, let's proceed on down to the virtual match floor, of course, because this is a pre-recorded game between Darren Hazelden on the left side of your screen. That's our Gravy Bones pilot, and Nora Abushama On the right side of your screen, piloting Fang, Drakai of Blades, unquestionably favored in this matchup, and it is not bias whatsoever.
Well, I can appreciate that you feel that way. We're gonna say that Fang's favored in this matchup, but Gravy does have the turn 0, get a dude in my yard, make some gold, which is kind of just like, I feel like you never want to see that on the other side of the table.
And the dude is not inconsequential. That is Swabby in the graveyard there. We're going to keep a good eye on these cards for you. There's a little bit of sheen on the side of Darren Hazelden. It is what it is, though. We will be your eyes and mouths in the sky, should I say. Swabby is just one of those mainstay, really solid bodies in the Gravy Bones deck. Usually, those Gravy Bones allies are assessed kind of on their butts rather than their swings. Swabby, however, is a 7-3 ally that can really put the hurt on opponents. And in a lot of cases, Ellie, I don't know if you're noticing the same thing, but certain Gravy Bones are kind of opting away from the biggest hammer that is Whaler Humperdinck in the favor of just a full suite of Swabbies. Have you seen that? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense when you consider two things about the decks. One being that I think we're starting to see Gravy decks run a lot more reds. And this is actually something I was going to point out with the Swabby hitting the yard so early, is that like I think a lot of Gravy decks very early on in the Heroes Genesis were playing things like Limpet and these cheaper, lower life allies to kind of generate a little bit of go again and go wider. And now a lot of Gravy decks are just on 0 Limpet because they're running more reds instead to play copies of Saltwater Swell. Obviously, we're on more things like Conqueror of the High Seas, though that card was likely always in the deck. We are just seeing more red go again. So Whaler gets a lot harder to cast, and Swabby kind of fills that role as, I'm not spending 12 on 11, but I am spending 5 on 7, which is a pretty similar rate, if not just a better one.
Darren Hazelden at instant speed, tapping that anime girl Gravy Bones Shipwrecked Looter. That's the first that I have seen of its sort, and discarding a Rigor Mortis and drawing a card, of course, at the expense of 1 gold. This is in response to Nora Abushama's first action, affirmative action, I should say, in the game, and that is an Obsidian Firevein pitching a red, of course, and playing a Pledge Fealty to give that Obsidian Firevein 2 go again. Not 100% sure on the target here. It does seem to be Darren Hazelden's face, though, as they descend on down to 38 life. Nora possibly foregoing killing the Swabby on this turn. However, I believe there's an affirm loyalty in the hand, which means that not only can they generate a hefty amount of fealty, 2 out of 3 that they need on in order to unlock the Fang hero ability, but also clear out that board that is so threatening.
Yeah, like we mentioned, she is on the Valiant Dynamos, so it looks like we are in for a bit of a grindier game. Actually, is this going into Swabby, or are we going face with this?
For Nora's sake, I kind of hope it's going to Swabby.
I feel the same.
But
No,
no.
it is going face.
Fearless and unabashed is Nora Abushama. Says, I'm going to start this game off with 2 fealty tokens, so faces the place with the helpful Honda folks. I mean, the Obsidian Firevein folks. Looks like it's back over to Darren Hazelden, who did not commit any cards to the block, so it's a 5-card hand, including that one in the arsenal, which is, by the way, covered with bunnies. There are 120 bunnies in the deck of Darren Hazelden.
And that's assuming he's only playing 60 cards.
That's true. Portside Exchange is the leadoff here, discarding yet another Swabby. That's 2 out of 3 that are in the deck, or I'm assuming are in the deck here. So it's Rigor Mortis and Swabby are the decomposing dudes at the ready in the watery grave. For now, Darren Hazelden with plenty of gas left in the tank.
I actually think that might be a 3rd Swabby in the arsenal, if my eyes don't deceive me, based on what I caught when he picked his arsenal up for a second there. So on Nora's approach here, it's definitely not. It's Loot the Hold.
Still
just a bunch of cards that are all blue and green over there.
Yeah, without a doubt. The color palettes are definitely not helpful to the eyes in the sky. Ooh, and looks like it's Loot the Hold plus Avasci, a plethora of blue cards entering the graveyard of Darren Hazelden on this turn, thereby unlocking all of his decomposing friends. It's an activation of the gold-baited hook as well. Probably going to be a swing of Swabby next.
Swabby in here is Interesting. Oh, he played Portside Exchange to start the turn off. I
Mhm.
completely forgot. I was gonna say he was gonna lose his hook, but he has guaranteed hook staying around, so this activation is pretty free, threatening both 7 damage and that gold on hit. There's always a bit of a tension playing against Gravy Bones where you want to deny him gold so that he can't get once Gravy kind of gets comfortable as his coffers are filled, you get into this really tough spot where his card selection becomes so oppressive that if he ever has 3, 4, 5 cards, you're just basically guaranteed to be in for some hurt unless the
Mm.
top 7 or 8 cards in a row are all just not action. So kind of tough to deny it though, because it's also for 7 power with Go again. And when you left Swabby on the board and now need to get him off the board on this turn, it puts you in a bit of a tough spot. Curious though, we're just not blocking the loot the hold hit trigger there, so maybe the hand is struggling on resources a little bit.
It definitely begs the question what Nora had going on there, because Saber Bloodshed is a 3 block and Valiant Dynamos is at the ready right there.
Yeah.
Makes me think that perhaps the remaining 3 cards in hand are all 2 blocks, thereby making the block really awkward. Because, like you said, Ellie, even though there is definitely tension about giving Gravy Bones gold, when that first attack is so front loaded with Gold Baited Hook, Avast and also
Yeah,
Loot the
you
Hold, a
gotta
little bit
cover
of
it up.
disruption. Yeah, in general, if your hand is clean enough to do it, I can't see an argument against it. That being said, it's 34 plays 27 in the favor of Gravy Bones, who is definitely in the driver's seat, and it's over to Nora Abushama, who leads off, yes, with a 3 block, but it's an Oath of Loyalty, definitely a card that is better used on offense, and finally clearing out that Swabby. In my opinion, possibly a turn later than it should have happened, because the upside of Nora's attack on the previous turn, getting that fealty off of the Affirm Loyalty, would have happened whether or not that Obsidian Firevein went towards Darren's face or Swabby. So I don't know. Nora might kick themselves a little bit later after not removing that Swabby 1 turn sooner.
Yeah, I think it's possible that her game plan here was to not bother clearing out any allies until she was at 3 fealty, so that there's a little bit less value wasted on those turns. But I think when you let that Swabby get a second swing, there's kind of an invisible, quote unquote, I mean, it's visible in the form of 7 damage straight on your dome, but an invisible cost to leaving Swabby there rather than sending 4 damage at face, since it was so instrumental to how Darren's turn looked. However, the other end of that is you just don't pressure Gravy at all. He keeps 5 cards and sends a bunch of boats at you. Definitely a hard balance to strike in a matchup like this.
So I am a little curious about where that third resource from the blue tip-off went, because there was Oath of Loyalty, Obsidian Firevein, and I assume the second Obsidian Firevein was swung as well because the Valiant Dynamos are refreshed. However, Rigor Mortis remains on the board. Wondering if things haven't been cleaned up as of yet, or
There's a Vigor on the board, just
there
towards the
is.
back a little bit.
But so if a blue was pitched, it
Oh,
should have
that's
been 2 Obsidian
true.
Firevein swings and 1 Vigor, right?
Was it a Brave Forge Bracers activation, maybe?
It's possible, entirely possible. Well, yeah, because then with the third fealty from Affirm Loyalty, then that last swing would have been free. Very curious choice, once again, not to remove that Rigor Mortis, especially because the turn was so clean in doing so. Nevertheless, the lead off for Darren Hazelden here is Chart the High Seas, finding 2 blues, unfortunately, not the big hit that Chart the High Seas is usually looking for, so essentially has just pitched 4 blue at the cost of 2 cards from deck. More bunnies hit the
Pitched a
graveyard.
blue, but has also put a blue in the bin, which is notable.
4 resources at the ready. Ooh, and sunk perfectly into a Conqueror of the High Seas. Unfortunately, finding his opponent without an arsenal on this turn. Nevertheless, 8 go again is nothing to shake your hat at.
Yeah, after a gold activation, this is just a 2-card 8 here.
With go again,
So
of course. And
definitely
Rigor
hard
Mortis
to complain about.
Yeah, Rigor Mortis still at the ready to consume an action point for 6 more damage. And I believe at least 3 cards in the hand of Darren Hazelden. So this is definitely not all she wrote.
Yeah, far from over here. Looks like Nora's considering a value block on the armor there.
That value block is going to be 5 from the mouth of Nora herself. 30 plays 24 after damage is calculated there, but Darren is far from done. Gold has been generated from that. There was a portside exchange play. No. It was chart the high seas. So no gold has been generated. Gold baited hook is not a risk-free proposition at this time.
Looks like Darren's thinking about doing a little bit of digging. So despite there being 3 cards, it might not be exactly what he's looking for on that side of the table. 3 cards and a whole bunch of gold, though. So hard to imagine that he doesn't find something compelling.
Give no quarter into the pitch. That's 2 that we've seen thus far this game. One of those cards that is also starting to become a little bit contentious in the higher level gravy list. I have seen it it kind of slipped down to 2 copies in a lot of those lists. And now with the advent of all of these red go again attacks, as you were mentioning earlier, Ellie, give no quarter kind of doesn't feed that game plan as well as some of the more board intensive gravy lists. So I have seen it kind of drifting out. Nevertheless, finds 2 copies in the deck of Darren Hazelden. I wonder if that signals that we're going to be seeing a Whaler Humperdinck later this game.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is the amount of give no quarters in someone's deck is more or less directly proportional to the amount of whale or humperdinks in someone's deck. I think often that card was used to basically allow you, since it both, like Chart the High Seas, puts a blue in the yard and functionally pitches a blue, lets you actually dump your whole hand into both resolving and swinging Whaler when you just have 4 blues in the late game.
Holy free holies, the tipple is flowing, Ellie. 1 has been resolved on this turn, and then I think that's 2 in the pitch zone alongside 3 other blue cards. Hey, why not add 1 more? That's 3 tipples in the pitch zone. And those coffers that Darren has established so easily earlier on in this game are going by the wayside, paying for what has already been a pretty solid turn, but could be even more powerful as the last gold goes by the wayside, and Darren Hazelden taps his waifu Gravy Bones to the side. And yes, discards the Whaler Humperdinck.
Yeah, just fully cashing out at the Bank of the Bones here. A Loot the Hold, I believe, hitting the table here. So definitely more to follow this. He did all that just to get a Whaler in the yard. You know, that was basically 5 gold spent and a bunch of cards pitched so far to just put an ally in the yard, unless this Loot the Hold was something he found off the top. But even still, maybe not the most impressive thing you would expect to see someone do with that many cards in their pitch zone.
Yeah, and you know, we do have to remember the damage that came prior. I believe it was a red golden tipple resolve. So this is a 17 damage turn with a handful of disruption with Loot the Hold. And if Nora had gone into this turn with an arsenal, then even more off of Conquer the High Seas. So, you know, it's still a significant amount that's going on and being done affirmatively by Gravy Bones. Nevertheless, popping 5-6 gold, you tend to think that there would be a little bit more fireworks.
Yeah, you usually want to be basically winning the game if you're cashing in the full stack like that. Kind of an interesting thing going on with Conqueror and Fang here, though, is that when Nora ends on a dagger swing and you have that Conqueror in hand, it's a little bit tough to choose how it gets used, because if you just put the Conqueror on the combat chain, it's pretty likely that if Nora just has 1 react and would come over by 1, unless there's an on-hit she cares about, it's most likely just going into her arsenal, the disruption for which you just blocked with, and then vice versa. If you don't block with it, she's likely to just go off arsenal and cash in for damage. So especially when you're playing without defense reactions, Fang does get a little bit of extra agency in the matchup on that axis. But I also think that Darren has identified that perhaps his best chance to win this matchup that people seem to believe is unfavored for Gravy Bones is to just beat the ever-loving hell out of the Drakai of Blades.
And I definitely agree with Darren about how to win this game against Fang. It's definitely to beat the snot out of that beautifully armored face of his. Nevertheless, Nora is coming back swinging, and I think this is going to be a very bread and butter Fang turn in Blistering Blade, giving this Obsidian Fire Vein a total of 4 power and go again, and probably just swinging that Second Obsidian Fire Vein at Rigor Mortis. Yes, and there it
Yeah, that
goes.
Rigor Mortis has to go. Cannot generate that much value.
Bye. Rigor Mortis is no longer with strings attached, and he's into the watery grave, never to be seen again this game. 21 plays 26, even though Nora, in my opinion, has been removing some of these allies a little later than I would be comfortable doing it. They are maintaining a very close life total race here. Only 5 life points separate these two heroes, and that is a far cry from a blowout.
Yeah, that's very true. We are pretty close to life total parity. That said, uh, I do kind of believe that if you are up on life and attacking, you are pretty firmly in the driver's seat. And speaking of being in the driver's seat, I believe that's a chum hitting the bin here, which is a fantastic way to gain more or less complete control of the flow of the game, especially into Fang, who is often limited to just 2 attacks per turn. And unless Nora wants to dump multiple reactions on one chain link, that chum might just eat her whole turn for breakfast.
Murderous Rabble coming in here for 3 after revealing the final Loot the Hold on the top of Darren's deck. 3 go again is the ask for Nora Abushama. If they have found themselves I think it's a Loyalty from Beyond the Grave in the hand. Excuse me, Loyalty Beyond the Grave, not From Beyond.
I also
and it comes
say
out to play.
The Grave.
Because it makes more sense, right?
Yeah,
I had an amazing conversation with Joshua Scott recently, but I don't know about the syntax on this one.
Covering 3, still 4 cards for Nora. Kind of curious to see what the rest of Darren's hand looks like, because we have seen 2 cards played out. I believe he still has 3 to work with, counting the Arsenal, thanks to Portside Exchange.
2 of them
Probably
immediately going into the pitch zone.
Yeah, I suspect this is a play and swing chum kind of angle.
A kind of angle that drives terror into the hearts of any that face the salty crew. It's a gold-baited hook activation, which is incredibly safe because Darren started off this turn with a Portside Exchange.
Yep, that is the engine that gold-baited hook represents, is that when you start your turn with some kind of effect that makes gold, of which Gravy Bones has access to 12 typically in a lot of these decks, 9 Tipples and 3 Portside Exchange, which is kind of Tipples 10, 11, and 12. You're often activating that hook every single turn, and it just gets harder and harder to deny that gold generation.
Now, normally for Fang, the 4 breakpoint is pretty easy to cover up thanks to those Valiant Dynamos, but they remain unrefreshed on Nora's side of the board, which I do think was a mistrigger at the end of their previous turn.
The second dagger went into Rigor Mortis, so it definitely was activated twice.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that the activation timing on this chum is illegal.
When the Vigor token pops?
Yes, Vigor token is start of turn, I believe.
You are right. It is start of turn. Good shout on that, because I honestly thought that was a legal play.
I don't quite think so, which is interesting.
Nevertheless,
thankfully, not going to matter too incredibly much, because she has the Hunted in hand. Yeah, the 1 card chum kill cooking in the hand there. Definitely what you want to see after seeing chum hit the table. That card can very much represent some pretty catastrophic blowouts for warriors.
And if they've got enough fealty tokens to remain at 3 after activating 1, then Scar Tissue is also going to be able to confer go again on that second dagger, and then for the Drakai can send right at Gravy Bones after the fact and also buy that fealty back, because we can assume that Darren is going to be marked at the end of that.
I think she might be at exactly 3. I think she made the 3rd and hasn't made any since. We saw an Affirm Loyalty played on Chainlink 1.
Nevertheless, if you think that your opponent is not going to block that second dagger, even though that Scar Tissue is yellow, you can go ahead and pop that 3rd fealty, go down to 2, and then one of the things I love so much about For the Drakai is then buy it back with impunity. I think one of the skill points, skill expressions with Fang is knowing when it is safe to dip below that fabled 3 fealty at multiple points during the game.
This one is coming in for 1. Also, like you said, Darren has to block in a pretty heads-up manner to avoid getting scar tissued here because a fealty on yellow scar tissue will represent 4 damage, I believe. So still going to come over the top of a 1-card block.
Oh, but it
Oh,
didn't
there's a
matter at
Draconic
all,
React in
Ellie.
Arsenal. So it doesn't matter at all with no fealty.
Up to 6 is this Obsidian Fire Vein. It's never just 1, and that's what I love so much about Fang. Also, a mark going to be conferred on hit here. And yes,
And a
Darren
4th
takes
fealty
it all.
generated for future scar tissues.
Anime Gravy Bones
Seeing
is
this-
marked. Here comes For the Drakai. Automatically getting another fealty token because Darren Hazelton is marked. Oh,
We
and
are
just
seeing
shipping the damage.
multiple vigors rolled into each other. This same vigor token has just paid for another vigor token 3 turns in a row. So I'm quite curious what Nora intends to actually cash it out on. I know a lot of Fang players will kind of keep kicking that can down the road until it's meaningful for either a Brave Forge Bracers activation or a Fire and Brimstone turn. But there are some 1-cost reacts in the Warrior repertoire, so definitely curious to see what that gets cashed out on.
A Windows security notification comes through, and I hope doesn't translate to the match. No, I don't think it came through. Oh, thank goodness. In that case, I'm just outing myself as having a janky setup at home. Regardless,
Let's get you to bed, old man.
Oh, no. I promise I don't actually use Windows Defender, okay? It just Windows is a little pesty with the things they want you to buy from them. Anyway, Allie, firewalls aside, 16 plays 17. Darren Hazelton says, I don't want to block a single one of these fiery daggers. I want to send everything back on offense. I want to be the aggressor.
Yeah, when you get to spend any 2 errant resources you have into drawing a card, thanks to having a big fat stack of gold and having a hero ability that lets you draw then discard, I do kind of imagine, like we said earlier in this game, that Gravy's just going to try and be the more efficient hero. And Darren is more or less pulling that off with aplomb, has been at life total parity or a little bit ahead every single time it's kicked over to his turn this entire game, and nothing has changed. He is just straight up not blocking from hand. He's not interested, and he's using his cards efficiently. We're going to see another Rigor Mortis hit the table here.
If Nora can hold on to the life that they've got and also continue to exude some serious value-based pressure from those Obsidian Fire Veins, free, mind you, then they might be able to get Gravy Bones into a situation where they're forced to be blocking just to stay alive. And if they're able to get to that point in the game, that is the moment where we might see this game flip on its head and go in the favor of the Royal Warrior.
We are blocking out the lead the hold this time, as opposed to the last time. Actually, we were talking about Gravy being efficient just now, but this was one of the more anemic Gravy Bones turns. Darren maybe didn't find what he was looking for between those gold and Gravy Bones activations, just sending across a Rigor Mortis with a loot the hold on it. Nora having 2 cards to work with is kind of the ideal situation for Fang when you're looking to use your value generated by multiple swings a turn to grind your opponent into a fine paste.
Especially when 2 of those cards are blue block 3s, which is exactly why they are not useless in the deck after Fang becomes online. Generally speaking, you want to gain your block value, your value on both defense and offense, not just in Fang, but in pretty much all of the Warrior class. That's what they do so well. And case in point right here is Obsidian Fire Vein, Tooth of the Dragon into another Obsidian Fire Vein, which is not coming in for 1, should be coming in for 4, and now 7 off of Searing Gaze. Oh no. Please say they didn't miss the Tooth of the Dragon ball here. No, Nora.
That card was a 0 for 1. No.
Naru. 0 for 2, I guess, if we count the Valiant Dynamos. Oh no, it didn't even need to be refreshed. Never mind. We're down. We're down Trumbungus, Ellie. Very
Tragic
devastating.
to see, but Fang's still in a pretty good spot here. Took 0 damage on that turn cycle, cleared an ally, and sent some meaningful damage face. And with no arsenal for this Conqueror of the High Seas to lay claim to, Nora actually looks a little bit in the driver's seat, a big change from compared to earlier in this game when that chum hit the table.
I definitely think this big, fearsome, majestic in Conqueror of the High Seas is the main reason that Nora decided to pack the Crown of Providence in the head slot for Fang. One of those, similar to the way you play against Assassin, it's really nice to just be able to shrug off one of these arsenal disruptive effects. Otherwise, you probably would rather pack that Balance of Justice that is making its way back into main boards all across Wraith, thanks to the fact that Gravy Bones just loves drawing cards. Ooh, but Loyalty from Beyond the Grave, the second copy that Nora has played thus far this game.
Some cards.
We like to draw cards no matter what class we are. Some of us have more access to it than others, but Nora has found a really powerful piece of just that right here.
Still, like speaking of the Crown of Providence, still quite a bit of armor to work with here. Grain's still representing a point of armor, and I believe that Brave Forge Bracers is blocked out now, but still got 4 pseudo armor to shove later in the game, assuming we can reactivate these Valiant Dynamos. A lot of life left on the board for Fang. Gravy in maybe a bit more tenuous of a spot. 2 points of armor for free that you don't really want to work with, while also just being behind on life, looking to close this gap a little bit with a red Swiftwater Sloop, just boats into boats into boats on this turn.
I was about to say, Gravy Bones is swashbuckling his way from one ship to another and shipping that damage all the way to Volcor. Nora, thinking about how to block this one out, or looks like has said absolutely no. I will not block this out any further. 12 now plays 11, and Darren has found himself with, albeit a small, but still significant life lead in this game. It's back over to Nora now, who pops that Vigor token probably for the 6th time at this point, after paying it forward over and over again.
Kind of interestingly, you mentioned a life lead. Gravy is literally ahead on life, but a bit behind thanks to that armor disparity.
Nora deciding that this is a moment that is good enough to go ahead and cash in those 2 copies of Loyalty Beyond the Grave from the graveyard.
And it looks like she found a Blade Flurry off the top there, so definitely a pretty heads-up decision there. This turn is looking like it's going to hurt. That is Long Whisker Loyalty, a Pledge Fealty, which is just so-so, and that Blade Flurry.
Curious. I almost like the decision to hold back the Pledge Fealty here and wait for a moment where blocks have been committed by Darren, especially late game. Pledge Fealty is just one of those cards that maybe doesn't get extra value or anything like that, but I definitely think it is one of those lackluster cards, especially after Fang is already online, that can kind of attribute a little bit of value to itself if your opponent blocks and you're able to sidestep to the next chain link.
Yeah, you can kind of find yourself being able to cash it in for a 1-card 4 between Dagger for 2 into Dagger for 1, refreshing your Dynamos. But actually, it could have been used to generate an extra point of value on this turn thanks to Long Whisker Loyalty. She could have used a fealty on the Blade Flurry before this second swing, and then the third swing cashed in the Pledge Fealty for just 1 more point, but that 1 more point would be a huge difference here with Darren at 8, this attack coming in for 6. That second dagger swing for 2 would be representing lethal damage.
In this case, Darren, threatened with the bad time of going down to 2, says, I'd rather cash in these quick dodge flexors, which is a little bit late for max value on this foot piece. If Darren had known about that Long Whisker Loyalty, which will confer an additional swing of one of Nora's daggers, then he would have loved to cash in quick dodge flexors on all 3 of these chain links with the blue in the pitch. Nevertheless, it is going to cover up or bring his blocks now to 3 on 6. Only 3 damage will leak through. Nora, of course, refreshing that Vigor token, keeping it like a beloved stuffed animal in her crib that is this game of Flesh and Blood.
Interestingly, you might not want to cash in the quick dodge flexors on the first dagger because Fang might be pretty content to just come in for 1 and then move to Arsenal from there. But once you see that Blade Flurry committed on the first chain link, I think it's probably pretty free to cash in the quick dodge flexors there because no Fang player is going to just not swing for the second time after playing a Blade Flurry.
No, we want to be a burning Beyblade, and we don't want anything else. We are swinging. Nora taking a minute to I don't know, maybe sandbag her opponent a little bit because she missed three value. She missed three value. Previous, technically four with the Valiant Dynamos that we saw missed earlier on, and is still ahead 6 life, forcing her opponent into a backbreaking position. Nevertheless, Darren has 3 cards in hand. One of them, a Give No Quarter, the first action resolved on this turn, as well as the activation of a Gold Kiss Rum. Is Whaler Humperdinck coming out to play, Ellie?
I think it seems pretty likely here. Also representing lethal damage, 11 being exactly Nora's remaining life total. Also, we saw Gravy go to activate the Gold Kiss Rum and then pause because it does say your next action gains go again. So, kind of a bit of an oopsie there if you were to activate your Gold Kiss Rum and then play Give No Quarter. Gotta do things in the right order. And the first thing hitting the table here is Chum. I think the next thing may be that Whaler Humperdinck. If this last card in Darren's hand is a blue, but it doesn't seem very... I don't think he's going to be able to swing Whaler should he put it on the table this turn.
Quick Dodge Flexor is, of course, a very powerful foot piece, but it comes at a high cost in Gravy Bones because the de facto foot slot is those Mage Master boots, which allows for a double ally and also swing ally turn. In this case, Darren packing the defensive option instead against the formidable blades of Fang, so instead is unable to do just that. So being forced into just establishing 2 allies here, but no. Oh, I'm so sorry. We had the rum, so we are getting there anyway. Mage Master boots be damned.
Yes. The Give No Quarter. Gonna pay for the Swabby as he enters the field here. That Give No Quarter was worth 4 resources here, or 6 rather. Well, kind of, sort of, it was also a blue, but it did put a blue in the bin, allowing Darren to both resolve the Chum and the Swabby and come in for 2, all off of just 2 blues.
I got a question here, Ellie. Who of the Necromancer allies, who would you ship the... who would you ship? Is it Chum and Swabby? Are they the power couple of the undead crew?
Chum and Swabby. I was such a fan of the Limpet Rigor Mortis pairing going on early in Gravy Bones' lifespan so far. Just those early games where you would have that Limpet hit the table, come in for 2, and then be followed by something big and nasty like Rigor Mortis was that was so iconic.
Another Hunt's End connects with the second Chum, friendly first mate, but second to go to the Watery Grave. And as the second Obsidian Fire Vein comes in, I'm going to provide a counterpoint here, Ellie. I kind of think that Chowder and Scuba are the ultimate pairing, and it's from a flavor perspective. I have to imagine that when these allies were alive, Chowder and
You
Scuba
think they've got like a Shaggy Scooby dynamic?
I definitely think there's a little bit of that, but just from like the dog is always gonna like the cook, right? I mean, how else are you gonna get table scraps and all that? You know what I mean? But I also love the idea of a Shaggy Scooby relationship.
Do you think Chowder's food tastes good? It heals you.
It used to. I'm sure it used to. I don't know.
I think it tasted good when he was alive.
Maybe he's the reason that the entire undead crew is dead.
Maybe he just can't cook, and that's why they're all cooked.
Maybe he packed, like, I don't know, leaded provisions or something like that, and everybody got food poisoning and died, and then rose from the grave. That
just sounds so believable.
I mean, right? It's a tale as old as
that
time.
Would just happen.
It's still a better love story than Twilight, Ellie. Looks like Fang is in the exact spot that they want to be. Yeah, it's a 2-card block on an Obsidian Fire Vein for 1. 2 cards in the hand of Nora. It is a rough situation because you gotta respect it. Nevertheless, it could be absolutely nothing. But popping a fealty is Nora Abushama. It's 2 scar tissues, which brings us up to 7.
7. 1 over. Looks like just going for that mark here, using our cards efficiently, maybe intentionally dodging arsenaling so that we don't get threatened by more arsenal disruption, like Loot the Arsenal or Conquer the High Seas, or even just Command and Conquer, a card that we haven't seen in Darren's deck, but does make an appearance in quite a few Gravy Bones decks.
It's back over to Darren. 4 plays 11. He's got a mountain, at least a knoll to climb here, with 1 card in hand and 1 card in arsenal. A Swabby, of course, is on the board, which is kind of exactly what Gravy Bones wants to be doing in these end games. And
yeah,
yes,
when Swabby sticks for a turn, it makes climbing that mountain a little easier. That is more or less 7 free damage on the board here, as long as you can pay to swing. And it looks like it is just that 1 card 7, thanks to Swabby sticking around.
and loot the arsenal, as you alluded to, in the pitch zone. So it is lurking in the deck of Darren Hazelden. That is a card that has kind of been making its way out of Gravy Bones decks as well in favor of those saltwater swells and other go-again attacks. And here goes Nora. Blocking like Warriors are wont to do. Taking 2 after blocking 5.
Where are you, Scooby-Doo?
Where's Chowder?
You
That's
were
what
on
I want
bars
to know.
there.
9 plays 4. Nora with 3 cards in hand. 1, however, is that Vigor token that has been cashed in for the majority of this game is finally ready to come out and play. Ellie, we've got an Endeared Devotion in the hand. Finally, that 1 resource is going to be cashed in here.
Yeah, and we're seeing Nora didn't have an arsenal, but after marking Darren on the previous turn cycle at the end, she did find Savor Bloodshed off the top, so promising some pretty serious punishment for Darren if she can come over the top.
And this is a great situation, too, because she's got a Tooth of the Dragon in the hand. So even if Darren blocks out this Obsidian Fire Vein perfectly, as he has done so, not only... Okay, Dead Threads is also going to come out to play. Going to block 1 over, potentially. What? Unfortunately, the mark was missed on the previous turn.
No! That's what Scar Tissue's for!
Nevertheless, it is up to 6 right here, meeting the blocks of Darren Hazelden, which means that this Dead Threads has not really bought all that much for its trouble. Obsidian Firevein
No,
now...
I believe this should be coming over by 1, right? Dead Threads blocking 1, Tipple and Call to the Grave are both 2 blocks. Darren is going to go down to 3 there.
Oh, you're right. I thought Call to the Grave was a block 3. What a terrible card. Why is anybody playing it?
Yeah, just so unplayable. Nobody's ever mentioned that card having a limited lifespan in the grand scheme of Fab.
Oh, and it's 2 allies in the hand, so the fist bump, virtually, of course, is going to have to be extended by both of these players. Nora taking down Gravy Bones, as we always knew was going to happen, because this matchup is so Fang favored, it's unbelievable that none of them have won.
I was going to say, I definitely was a little bit skeptical on how this game might actually turn out, but even with a little bit of spewed value, Fang did get there pretty convincingly, so I have been humbled. I have learned something new today. Fang maybe just is pretty sick into Gravy Bones.
I definitely think that he's got legs, maybe not sea legs, but maybe armored fiery legs that can do their own, hold their own in certain regards. Well, we do have to talk about the fact that even though Nora might have stumbled here and there in terms of missing some value and some triggers, she did establish 3 fealties within the first 2 turns of the game. And that is not a given when you're playing Fang.
Yeah.
Even when your deck is so geared towards turbo fealty. It just doesn't happen all the time. And so that definitely aided and abetted her here.
I've definitely lost games as Fi to Fang just outracing me. When he finds those fealties so early, it represents a metric truckload of value if you can find it as quick as you'd like.
Well, folks, if you want to see more from the League That Means Nothing, you don't have to wait very long because, you know what, Ellie? I enjoyed this so much. I would love to do it again. How about we do it right now?
I'm in, for sure.
Okay, party on. So stick
as long
around.
as it's a good matchup, as long as it's an interesting matchup.
It is more on that in a minute. We'll be back with more The League That Means Nothing. I hope you enjoyed this match with Ellie Bird and I. And what the heck, we're going to do another one in just a moment. But you got to wait for that one to come out, probably for another day, because Az loves to prolong the magic. Like and subscribe to The League That Means Nothing. Go Again Gaming, of course. We'll be back with more The League That Means Nothing. More Bryce Platts, more Ellie Bird after this.